自動でお風呂を沸かします。お風呂の際は自動で。
Hello and welcome to another episode of No Such Thing as a Fish, a weekly podcast. This week coming to you live from St. Albans! My name is Dan Schreiber. I am sitting here with Anna Toshinsky, Andrew Hunter-Murray, and James Harkin. And once again, we have gathered around the microphones with our 4 favorite facts from the last 7 days. And in no particular order, here we go. Starting with fact number 1, and that is Anna.
My fact this week is that in the 19th century, you could be rejected from the army for having bad breath.
Wow. Why? Why?
The justification is really no more complicated than you think, which is that it's fucking gross for everyone else.
Right.
I can imagine, if you're in a submarine or something.
But what if you have to give another soldier the kiss of life, but you accidentally send them into the arms of death?
I don't think the kiss of life had been invented yet, even. This is from a book written in 1840, which, I don't know why I was reading it, but it's called Hints on the Medical Examination of Recruits for the Army. And there's some great stuff in there. And the thing I read was, some recruits are so offensive in their breath as to be intolerable to their messmates. And from these causes are discharged from the French service and ought to be from every other.
Wow.
So
this book is really good. It's great fun. So I highly recommend it because it's talking about how you examine people for the army. And there are lots of reasons for rejecting people. Unsound health, fair enough. Scrofula, loss of teeth, flat feet. You had to be inspected sober and naked by the recruiting doctor.
How are they going to get you naked if you're sober?
Great point. They also, large testicles, you're out. You're not allowed in the army.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Why
if your
is
testicles
that?
are too big. Any
Why?
remarkable...
Too big a shot, if they're aiming for you. Why was the reason for too big balls?
Any remarkable enlargement or induration of the testicle is a cause of rejection.
I bet so many people claim that was why they got rejected.
Yeah. Everyone's leaning away from their breath. Actually, it was the testicle that meant I didn't get it. Just to clarify. I think they're talking about sort of hydroseals or conditions where you have where they really do get very big indeed.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, also you get turned away for having a narrow chest or for relaxed abdominal rings, which I think might just mean you diarrhea. I don't know. I've got
For
no
me, that
idea.
was like having a belly, what do you call them? Love handles kind of thing.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
That makes
Yeah.
more sense. Imagine that inspection if it's up the anus.
No, sorry, mate.
Your abdominal rings are...
Not tense enough for me.
Crikey.
I've never said that before. I just want to be clear.
If anything, that would make me more tense.
Oh, there was also, so when it was talking about how to, because you get turned away for being a habitual drunk, and so the book gives information on how to spot a habitual drunk, and it says you can sense it on their breath, so that's another reason why bad breath, you might get rejected for it, because if you can smell old alcohol on their breath, and also look out for grog blossoms. Do you know what they are?
I think, are they like spots on your nose or something?
Sort of a
It's really close.
like a general, that ruddy flush that you get. If
Basically, it's burst blood vessels, yeah. You're skirting around it, yeah. Isn't that because, if you're an alcoholic, you've got burst blood vessels all over your face.
Yeah.
But I like grog blossoms.
Yeah, It's a
Wow.
cool word. There was a
quite
guy,
lovely.
it was in the news quite recently that too many people were getting turned away from the British Army, and it was like, oh, this is the end of the world, this is going to happen. There was a guy in Leeds called Jack, 17, we don't know his surname, and he said that he didn't get in because he had acne. He said there was 2 things. He had acne and cold hands and feet on the day of the test.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I've had acne before, and it literally just clears up within a day or so, and also it's snowing outside.
Right.
But they were having none of it, and they wouldn't let him in.
Yeah,
That's
but it hasn't put him off. He's going to reapply when his acne goes.
And in the summer, maybe?
Yeah, exactly.
But why? The enemy's not going to shoot at you more if you've got acne.
Well, this was a weird thing. They found that there were so many medical conditions that they were turning away that as a result they were really understaffed for new recruits for the army. So they had a target of 82,000 people and they fell short 5,000 because people would be turned away for acne. They were being turned away because because, someone had a nut allergy, which, apparently that's important.
Yeah,
not to
but
have.
if you're going to go and seize that nut factory from the enemy, then that's a problem, isn't it?
Well, I guess it makes it easier, yeah, if you're allergic to nuts. If Bond was allergic to nuts, it's way easier to kill him, right?
Do you think what you would do is tie him down on a table and just throw peanuts closer and closer to him until they landed in his mouth?
Unless, of course, it's an airborne nut allergy, in which case you just need to leave a packet of peanuts slowly being opened by a machine. And that's the thing. Then he's got to get out before the packet of nuts over. I will watch all of these scenarios happen.
In fairness to that guy, he said, and the reason that this got in the news is because nut allergies can be really dangerous, but he had a nut allergy that he didn't need an EpiPen for and hadn't had any reaction for over 10 years.
Yeah.
So that was the thing about that.
Yeah.
There was, I'm sure you guys may well have come across this in your research. In 2020, there was a potential recruit who was rejected from the army for having a tattoo. And the problem is that once you apply to the army, if you say you have tattoos, they ask you to send in photos of the tattoos. And he had a 6-inch tattoo of a penis on him, and they said that's no good. We're not allowed.
How realistic was this tattoo?
It was extremely realistic.
Could he not have just said, "This is my actual penis"?
Yeah.
It was in the uncanny valley between looking too much like a penis to be comfortable with, but not so much like a penis that you think, oh, that's
That you feel nice and comfortable.
exactly. Thank you.
Was he turned away?
He was turned away. He was
turned away.
He was
Okay.
told, thank you for your interest, but we can't take you into the army. Sorry, the rules are very strict on any tattoos which have kind of, sexual meanings or offensive meanings or potentially offensive meanings.
Where was it?
It was, well, that's the thing, which I think is slightly unfair. It was on his inner thigh. So it wasn't in the wrong place. It wasn't.
Was it to remind him where to leave it? Like a parking spot.
Yeah.
It was a very roomy parking spot. It really was. It's quite like it's.
Why would you do a big one? You've got the comparison right there. Do a tiny penis
Well,
tattoo.
because you can
Absolutely
see
right.
it's cold. Here's what it usually looks like. It's a perfect alibi. Oh, I got an ink stain on my leg again from my penis earlier in the day in a hot room. Do you know, it's not even once like trying to get into being rejected from the army before you get into it. There's a story I read which is of someone who was in the army who they were desperately trying to get out through loopholes, and this was Timothy Leary, who was the LSD. He was one of the big gurus. He was a counterculture character in America, and he was part of the armed forces in America. And he kind of did a lot of pranks, and he exposed some of the generals to weird things that embarrassed them. So they desperately tried to get him out. So he was shaving once, and he cut himself. And they tried to get him out on the grounds that he had damaged military property.
And was he the property himself?
Yes, because when you're a part, and this was back in the 50s and 60s,
so clever.
when you sign up to the military, you sign your body over. You are the military. So that was damage to their property.
What?
When
What
he
if
cut
you
himself.
cut your nails?
If you, they were trying to get him out, so they were loopholing it.
I know,
they
but
were-
it sounds like, did it work?
he stayed in. He managed to stay in, but they desperately tried all these things.
Another group of people who wanted people to leave the army or leave the British army was the Nazis. And so they decided that they would drop a load of leaflets on the Allied forces to give them tricks of how to get kicked out of the army. And the thing said, oh, you've done a really good job, but now's the time to, give up because you're going to lose anyway. So this is the best way to get out of the army. So they had these little pamphlets. One of them advised men to fake heart disease by smoking 20 to 30 cigarettes per day. And it said, if you normally smoke that much already, why not double the number?
There was an interview in Vice Arabia which interviewed people who'd successfully exempted themselves from the army and found ways of doing it. And one guy said he just spent months and months completely gorging constantly. So every meal he'd eat burgers, pizzas, pastries. He said, I added mayonnaise to everything I ate, and then I would have mayonnaise as its own snack between meals. He gained 5 stone in 6 months.
That's amazing. Mayonnaise as a snack.
Yeah, delicious, I know. Can't believe he wasn't doing it already.
We're going to have to move on very soon to our next fact. It's gone so quick. Just quickly on bad breath and halitosis.
Yeah.
The phrase, often a bridesmaid, never a bride.
Oh, yeah.
That comes from Listerine, and it was to do with bad breath.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so these were adverts in America where they would have wording like, Edna's case was a really pathetic one. Like, every woman, her primary ambition was to marry. Most of the girls of her set were married, or about to be, yet no one possessed more grace or charm or loveliness than she. As her birthdays crept towards the tragic 30 mark, marriage seemed farther from her life than ever. She was often a bridesmaid, but never a bride. And that popularized that phrase, and that's why we use it.
Their adverts are unbelievable examples in basically negging your audience. So they're all things like, he never knew why, and it shows someone being socially shunned, or they say it behind your back, or my favourite one, are you unpopular with your own children? It's all...
I know you think it's because your balls are too big, but I promise you've got halitosis.
Okay, it is time for fact number 2, and that is James.
Okay, my fact this week is that in 1888, there was a squatting competition in India. Despite being up against the country's best wrestlers, the winner was a 10-year-old boy who managed several thousand squats, but was then bedridden for a week.
It's so cool.
So this is the exercise, the squats, basically. And this is a young boy who later became a wrestler. He was known as the Great Gama, and he's one of the most famous wrestlers from Indian history. In the time, there was loads of Maharajas and stuff like that, and there was this guy called the Maharaja of Jodhpur, and he decided that he wanted to find the greatest squatter in the whole of the land. And they got all these wrestlers in to see who could do it best. And this guy, his original name was Ghulam Muhammad Baksh Butt, he was coming from a really kind of a wrestling dynasty, and his father had died quite young, and they decided that this young boy was going to be the greatest wrestler in the whole world, and we're going to do it. Even at the age of 10, he's going to do loads and loads of squats, loads of push-ups, everything. And at the age of 10, he managed to beat all of these wrestlers in the whole country.
Yeah,
to be
so
fair,
good.
you've got less distance to cover if you're 10 and squatting. I would say that every squat should count for half a squat.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That would be the rule that I imposed, right? It's much easier to go up and
I
down.
suppose
squats.
you're right, really.
You haven't been through puberty, so you've got less muscle mass, so
But
it's
I
harder.
think Hannah's a bit right, because you know, like on Britain's Got Talent, when they the kids win, but they're actually a bit shit compared to the adults.
To be fair to him, yes, he was a kid, so maybe he had an advantage, but this guy...
He didn't have an advantage. I didn't mean that seriously. I'm not slamming him, just in case someone's alive who's descended from Gama, and they are.
Right.
He didn't have an advantage.
Okay, cool. Just
Yeah.
don't track Anna down and squat on her.
But how do you feel about the tightness of these rings?
But this guy went on to be one of the greatest wrestling champions of all time.
Yeah.
That was like when you watch a Superman movie and Superman discovers
He
as Clark
effectively became world champion.
Yeah, he was world champion.
Everyone called him the world champion. They didn't have proper championships in those days, but they called him the world champion.
Kent. Yeah.
Well, by the time he was an adult, we got a picture of him here. He had 30-inch thighs and 56-inch chest. You know, just to put that into context, there was a guy called Roberto Carlos, who some of you might know, a soccer player, who had famously massive thighs, and his were 24 inches compared to 30-inch for Gama.
Wow.
And his inch was 56 inches, and Arnold Schwarzenegger's chest was 42 inches.
Wow.
So that's how big this guy was,
Yeah.
Gosh, his diet, the training sounds incredible. His daily diet included 6 pounds of butter, 10 litres of milk, half a litre of ghee, which is basically sort of clarified butter, isn't it? It's,
A few snacks of mayonnaise.
yes, and one sachet of Hellman's mayonnaise every day. But he did 3,000 press-ups a day and had 40 wrestling bouts against other people.
And 5,000 squats a day.
Yeah.
I mean, a squat, it is... I didn't think it was essential to making a world champion, but I tried some today just to feel what it's
Sure.
like. It's hard to squat.
Yes.
After the first, 3, it's really...
It is.
Well, thank you, Joe Wicks. We don't know exactly how many he did, actually. We have his word for it that he did 5,000.
Right.
We know it was very, very high, but we don't know exactly how much it was. And that's because no one ever saw him start a routine and end the routine, because no one stayed in the gym for as long as he did.
Oh, wow.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Very boring spectator sport watching someone squat,
Yeah.
to be fair.
I did think that with the squats, that if you're doing a competition and watching how many squats are going on, how do you monitor each individual? Do you have a little bell at the bottom?
Yeah.
That
Well, there should
the
be
bottom needs to ding?
there should be an angle you have to hit, shouldn't there?
Yeah.
Because
It
otherwise
was basically time. It was
Oh,
how
so it
long
was just
they did.
continuous squats,
And
got
they
it.
asked him how many did. They're pretty certain it was over 2,000. He said he'd done thousands but had lost count. But they knew that it was over 2,000. And the modern record of consecutive squats is about 3,200. So it's not a completely out of the question number. It's kind of a reasonable number.
Yeah, but have you ever asked a 10-year-old, how many, how many times did you just run around the garden? Oh, 1 million. Yeah, okay, we'll write that down in the history books.
Anna really got it in for the child stars and child athletes today.
I never trust a
Incredible.
word. I also don't trust a word of his diet. I find it so interesting, the legends that build up around these people, because like the details of his diet they're just implausible. You'd have a heart attack. He was consuming like 50,000 calories a day as far as the legend is concerned, which you wouldn't have time to do anything else. But I'm not calling him a liar. I'm calling his press team liars.
That's what I kind of agree with you. I think this whole period of entertainment, from magicians through to these strongmen acts and stuff like that, it's a period where there is no truth, I feel.
All right.
It's all...
Well, if you guys don't find that plausible, you are going to love this next one. This is a more recent report, actually. This is a report from the Telegraph a few years ago. I think it was in 2011. This is about someone who could do one-finger push-ups, okay? So it's an athlete called Qi Guizhong from China who holds, and I'm quoting directly here, holds the record for the most one-finger push-ups in 30 seconds.
Okay.
He did 41 one-finger push-ups in 30 seconds, set that in December 2011. I'm still quoting, "The power of Guizhong's finger is so strong, he is said to be able to kill a man just by pointing at them."
Oh, wow.
That's amazing. What newspaper was that in?
That was in the Telegraph, of all places. I just love the idea of him, he's trying to pick teams in football. You! Oh, shit. Oh, no. Birds do press-ups before they fly. Baby birds.
Really?
How sweet is this?
That's amazing.
Because they...
Is that to get their muscles better? Is it really?
Exactly.
Interesting.
They have this puppy fat when they're young, and before they fly, they have to have enough strength. Obviously, you can't just try flying, especially if you're leaving a high nest. And swifts have been observed. They do these press-ups where they push and extend their wings, and they rest on the wingtips for up to 9 seconds.
Wow.
And that kind of, I mean, almost all animals don't do exercise.
No, hasn't caught on.
No, but that's because animals don't have to do exercise normally, because muscle changes get triggered by not exercise in most animals. So like bears, it gets triggered by seasonal changes, the weather changes, and then it just releases muscle-forming compounds into their bloodstream. And then
that
they
would be
get
useful,
fit.
wouldn't it?
Really?
It's incredible. Yeah, humans do not have this skill.
Wow.
But scientists tried it.
Just like if every April just you walked into the office and everyone's buff as hell.
Exactly. It's so good. It's so unfair that we don't have this. Morning, Ted. Morning.
Someone comes in still really skinny, forgot to hibernate. Can't believe it. Is that...
Baby birds do that, but birds do that even before they're babies. They exercise in the egg. They exercise, if you can say.
Come on.
Really?
That's incredible.
This is true. So these are baby birds who are parasitic birds. Like cuckoos, for instance. They'll lay an egg in another bird's nest, and then their baby will come out. And often they'll attack the other birds. And they found some parasitic birds who will do exercises inside the eggs so that when they hatch, they're already hench as fuck, so they can beat up all the other birds. Isn't that amazing?
That's so funny.
There's going back to Gama for a second. There's a really cool thing where there's a museum that you can go to that has a giant rock that he once lifted, and it's so heavy that they were like, that needs to go in a museum. So it's 1,200 kilograms heavy.
Well, he never lifted that.
You'd die,
So,
wouldn't you?
I mean, he might have been said to have lifted it, but no one's ever lifted more than 600 or 700 kilos.
As far as we know.
Pick Andy up on the old pointing fingers to death. All I'm saying is pick up a
Okay,
rock.
Andy, that never happened either.
Thank you.
It's about that's about as heavy as a bull, right? Or like a big bull, or a quite small hippo, I think.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, but he's a bit, like smaller in size, right? Like it's harder to pick up a hippo.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Unless you go underneath it and sort of lift it up.
It
like
fights back though, which rocks don't. I think that's often why they use weights rather than hippos in these contests.
You know that when you've done exercise and you have muscle, and then you don't exercise for a while and you lose the muscle,
Atrophies.
atrophies, yeah, that is an evolutionary aid. We're designed to do that. It's a good thing,
Really?
really. Yeah. This is because kilos of muscle are really expensive to maintain, and you are about 40% muscle on average, and so it's a lot of your energy. It's about a fifth of your basic energy budget just goes on keeping your muscles going. So actually, it's an advantage that you don't keep the muscle when you stop exercising. It doesn't feel like it. It would be very nice if you just kept it forever, but
I'm having a real sort of flashback on your behalf to you being 14 at school and explaining this to the 7 bullies around you.
Guys, you're all actually very inefficiently big.
Do you know Zumba? We were talking about exercise.
Yeah.
Zumba used to be called a rumba size. Can you think of where the word rumba size comes from? It's two words together.
Is there a dance called the rumba?
The rumba, yeah.
And exercise?
No. It comes from a mixture of rumba and jazzercise.
Of course.
I see.
Jazzercise I find really interesting. So Jazzercise was started by a woman called Judy Shepherd Missett in 1969. And basically, she did it just as a warm-up to start off with, and everyone loved it. And soon it was all over the country in the US, and then eventually all over the world. Absolutely huge. She decided she wanted to turn it into a thing, so she went to her bank, and she said, can you give me some money to kind of set up this Jazzercise thing? And the bank looked at the numbers, and they said, no, this is just a fad. It's a complete waste of time. And then she said 7 years later, that bank went out of business. 50 years later, she was still working.
Nice.
Isn't that cool?
Although I don't know what the hell Jazzercise is, so I don't know who these hordes of people are who are doing it. I would have thought it's incredibly difficult to exercise to jazz music. If there's one genre of music I'm not exercising to, it's Miles Davis crooning away.
I'll be honest, it's more just jazzy than jazz.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably more trad jazz than like a 12-minute bassoon solo.
We're going to have to move on in a sec to our next fact. Can I tell you my favourite squat terminology that I learned?
Yeah,
it's Finnish and it's slang used in Finland, and it's squat wine. You heard of squat wine?
Like as in the drink wine?
Yeah, the drink wine. So squat wine is wine that is so cheap that they keep it on the lowest shelves of a supermarket. You need a squat to get down to read the labels.
That's so good.
Okay, it is time for fact number 3, and that is Andy.
My fact is, there was a breed of dogs in Victorian times which only existed in taxidermy form.
The perfect pet.
The perfect pet.
Very low maintenance.
It's quite weird, that, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
how do you stuff something that doesn't exist?
Well, exactly. So this is from an exhibit at the Horniman Museum in South London, which is a great museum. They've got lots of stuff and lots of stuffing. They've got lots of stuffed things. And they've got these dogs, which they look like dogs, but they're not sort of proper dogs. So they're dog skin. Basically, the Victorians loved tiny dogs. Guys, just tune out for a while. I'll come back and...
What we know up here, because we've had to read about this fact, is that Andy's trying to describe something quite gruesome.
It's quite charming. They took stillborn puppies and they loved miniature dogs and they loved incredibly tiny toy dogs, but there are dogs which don't exist in this smaller form in their actual life. So they would take puppies that had not been born alive, would arrange those into the shape and sort of situation of proper adult dogs, but looking tiny. They called them Roman dogs or dwarf dogs, and they were kind of fashionable things to have. So basically, it's, an incredibly tiny Great Dane in a glass case.
Yeah,
stuffed.
but the thing is that actually they kind of convinced people that they were real kind of Lilliputian, St. Bernards or whatever, didn't they? They were like, it's normally a big dog, this is a real tiny one, you can buy it for thousands of pounds. And people did buy it for thousands of pounds, not knowing that they had this kind of trick.
It's like the micro pig craze from about 10 years ago.
Well, when people accidentally just bought normal pigs that were piglets.
Piglets,
and then horrified.
So it is pretty gruesome, but it's
It's amazing though. It's astonishing that they did it. And the mannequin and they still do this today in taxidermy, which I didn't realize, which is you kind of, you take the skin of the animal. So it's not, I always thought the insides were probably still there of a taxidermy thing, of an animal. But
You thought
actually...
it's sort of like rotting organs
No,
and flesh.
I thought it was like...
bones and the bone. You wire the bones
Okay,
like
It was
fair
like
enough.
pickled or something. It was just,
Gross.
To be honest, I haven't really thought about what's inside the dog in my living room. But But I don't have that. But it's basically you buy as if like you were passing a shop and you saw a mannequin out there and they've put the clothes on it. It's kind of like that. There's a mannequin shape of the animal, and then you fit the animal over it, which is bizarre, but that's how they do it.
Sounds so satisfying, like putting a sock on or something.
Yes, yeah.
Using it over.
Or trying to get a tent back into that bag, you know.
I was thinking of stretching over, but you're thinking of stuffing in. We've got different taxidermy techniques.
You're right. Yeah.
You'd both be fired from the taxidermy club. Yeah. Just quickly, the Victorians were really bad for dogs. We think of the Victorians as dog obsessed because they invented Crufts and all this stuff. Actually, it was a disaster. They became obsessed with particular breeds because they invented dog shows, and this led to this huge genetic bottleneck where loads of dogs which didn't happen to be fashionable in dog shows died out. So there are all these breeds of dog that we don't have anymore because they weren't suitable for being shown in dog shows or just weren't trendy enough. So,
Really?
Right.
Yeah.
But did Crufts used to have a stuffed dog category?
No, there was never...
What, you think they're just dragging it along all those ramps and stuff?
They smash through every single fence. It's a disaster.
I think you'd just be like,
Past
stay.
Well, every dog has won that round.
They did. The Victorians were really great taxidermists, weren't they? They were much more imaginative and creative than maybe you imagine taxidermy. And they love putting different animals in different human activities. So a bit like that picture of dogs playing poker or whatever. They put squirrels particularly. They like to put doing things like boxing. So they dress them up in boxing gloves, or they'd have croquet playing cats. They'd have like little rabbits all sitting in a schoolroom with little books they're writing in, and, you know, spectacles and things like that. I mean, it's disgusting, but also quite sweet at the same time.
I love there's so many people that we know the names of for very different reasons who were all taxidermists or love taxidermy.
Oh, really?
That I did. Yeah, so like Captain Birdseye. Before he was a fish finger person,
These taste disgusting.
he was a taxidermist. So
Was he really?
Wow.
One day he just sort of noticed, I've got all my fingers inside this fish. And then he thought, what if the fish was inside the finger? Light bulb moment.
Huge moment, yeah.
In 2017, a woman from Dundee advertised her dog, Snoopy, on Facebook, who was dead. And she wrote, this is the offer.
What do you mean advertised?
Well, she wrote this. Had our dog turned into a rug when he died. Treasured family pet. Has to be sold as new dog keeps trying to hump it.
And that was Snoopy.
That was Snoopy.
Did she get peanuts for it?
She was looking for £100 on near offer. Very cosy and unusual piece, she said. I don't know if it's sold.
That's amazing.
Should we the father of taxidermy is kind of this cool guy called Carl Akeley. I think that's how you pronounce it. Who he started out stuffing animals in museums, and he really changed it, because back in those days, the idea of taxidermy was just you'd stuff an animal as full as you possibly could, so it was really bloated, no idea of its shape, how it was supposed to look. He said you'd turn, like if you had a deer, you'd turn it upside down, you'd hang it upside down, and you just drop stuff from above into its skin, and then you'd sew it up. And he came up with the idea of actually making animals look like they had in life. And he was amazing, though. So he went to Somaliland in 1896, and he was pounced by a leopard, and he killed this leopard by shoving his hand down its throat.
Right.
I think, wasn't it? Shoving one hand down its throat and then one hand around its throat.
It's
Crikey.
pretty, and I think the story is that it's sort of he heard something rustling in a bush, and he thought, oh great, a tortoise or something like quite manageable, and he just disappeared into the bush, and then his colleagues saw him wrestling with a leopard.
Oh my God.
It was terrifying. Yeah, he was responsible for a lot of conservation, so he shot gorillas and things, and then he started feeling really queasy about it. He thought, this isn't right. This feels like murder, to be honest. And it's thanks to him that a big, I think it's Virunga National Park, Virungas.
Oh, really?
That was Africa's first national park, and it was set up largely thanks to his efforts and his advocacy. So thanks to him, the mountain gorilla, which he had shot and felt awful about shooting, it's largely thanks to him that it survived to the extent it has. Yeah, so he really had a 180 turn on his...
Yeah.
That's cool.
I hate to move us on. James, do you want to do one more thing? Or
Just that if you live in Anchorage, anyone listening, and you go to the local library, you can get books out, but you can also get stuffed animals out. They have. Apparently, this is not quite well known, even if you live in Anchorage. But you can go in and you can say, "I'd like a stuffed rabbit, please," and you can take it out, and then you can bring it back. And the most popular thing they do is owls. Can you guess why owls are the most popular thing they give out?
Is it the Harry Potter cosplay?
Yeah, close enough. It's kids' parties. So whenever children in Anchorage have a party, if they have a Harry Potter theme party, they always get the stuffed owl out.
Ah, cool.
So I can't wait for this podcast to go out. The scenes at Anchorage Library the next morning. Dozens of people queuing up. Where's my stuffed rabbit? Where's my stuffed mountain dog?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited.
apparently, I was reading Brian Blessed's autobiography, and he says that when he was a kid growing up, if you found a dead cat on the side of the road, you kept it sort of as a toy and you used it with your mates. So you'd go around holding a dead cat.
No, you didn't.
That's what Brian... Are
That's
you calling
that's
Brian
what-
Blessed an exaggerator? A liar? Someone who's going to go around telling fibs? How dare you?
I actually sort of believe that he did that.
He's an extraordinary man, but that's what he said. Yeah, and he said you would swing it around like how you would see a posh person swinging a cane or Charlie Chaplin. You would swing it by the tail. I'm just reporting the facts from Brian Blessed.
Wow.
He could somersault over walls as well, he says.
Okay.
It's a really good biography. We're going to have to move on soon, guys, to our next fact, final fact.
On stuffed, sort of, again, like lots of ancient stuffing techniques and stuffed animals, there were lots of railway stations in the UK had station dogs, which would, in life, they would collect money. So there were dozens of these dogs all over the place. And they would collect money for particularly the widows and children of people who'd worked on the railways and died in accidents, things like that. So sort of widows and orphans, that kind of stuff. There were dozens called London Jack all over London. And Slough has Station Jim still on the platform to this day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they would collect coins in their mouths originally and then just sort of, gather the coins together. But then they had to have boxes tied to them, sort of a little holster. And the reason they had to do that was because Brighton Bob was found to be buying biscuits at a local bakery with the coins.
Okay, let's move on to our final fact of the show. Time for our final fact, and that is my fact. My fact this week is that in October 2021, the pop star Shakira attended the World Championships of keeping a balloon in the air for as long as possible. There's a slight knowing laugh and applause happening here because the audience is aware of something that happened in the first half of our show tonight. But this is a thing that has started a new annual championship that will no doubt rival some of the great championships around the world.
Like a World Cup, an Olympics,
Exactly.
and a keeping a balloon in the air.
The
for as
three
long as
things that
possible.
we'll know about that will be like the EGOT of the sporting world. So the reason Shakira was there is because her partner, Gerard Piqué, was part of the organizers who set up this world ballooning event.
Actually, Gerard Piqué has won a World Cup, I'm pretty sure. So, if he could win this as well, he's only an Olympic title away from the
EGOT of sports. God, he's won away. Well, that's amazing. So, this was set up, and it happened in Barcelona, and all teams came in, and basically, if you see pictures of it, it is effectively people going around an obstacle course. They're representing their countries and teams, and they're trying to keep a balloon up in the air for as long as possible. And the whole purpose is you slap the balloon away, and if it hits the ground, the team loses a point, and then they have another chance of trying to keep it. So you're just diving over.
But you're competing.
It's two countries in
Exactly,
the room at the
sorry.
same time,
It's-
and you're hitting it so that they won't be able to get to it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Otherwise, it'd be seriously boring.
Just on, incredible achievements in the world of ballooning, there is a ballooning Olympics, basically. It's called the World Balloon Convention. And so you get hundreds and hundreds of twisters, as they get known.
is this for making balloon shapes?
Yeah, and making incredible castles and incredible displays, and people will turn up and twist, which is their cool phrase for it, for 27 hours in a row. It's nuts. They do it so much, and there are lots of people who are enormous celebrities in the balloon world One of them is a man called Larry Moss, and I didn't just Google Moss plus balloons for anyone listening. He's been described as the best balloon artist in the world. He once built a haunted house entirely out of balloons. An entire haunted house.
How does that look different to a house?
Was made of balloons.
And so,
haunted part.
What's the haunted part?
Well, it's shit scary inside, you know. It's got sort of... Yeah, exactly. It's got skeletons made of balloons and, you know, zombies made of balloons and vampires.
And a carousel, a fully functioning carousel, I think he had, that you could ride around on, made of balloons.
You saw it as well, Anna?
Yeah, I know. Oh, I know Moss, yeah.
It looks frightening, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. He actually, I think the reason he did it was because his wife, Judy, was in a coma in 2003, and he promised her that if she woke up, he would build her a castle out of balloons. And she did. And so he had to. And they're now divorced.
Really? Yeah. Wow. No.
Yeah. Beautiful fairy tale ending, you hope.
That was a roller coaster, Anna.
So this happens a lot then. We have lots of balloon championships, it sounds like.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
The twisters are great. I was reading about another balloon twister called Ralph Dewey, who's written 16 books on balloon twisting.
Wow.
And along with 14 other books, great works of fiction, I am sure. And he's also he's a member of the Fellowship of Christian Magicians, for whom he is the 5-time recipient of the Best Balloon Lecture. Huge.
He does, and Anna, you're bearing the lead a bit here because I read a bit about him too, and he's a key figure in the gospel clown movement.
What is that?
Well, it's kind of as it is on the tin. Like, it's a group of Christian clowns who believe in spreading the word of God, but through clowning.
Do they turn a bucket full of confetti into wine?
I think they just talk a lot about religion and they also do some clown stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, it's like Jesus when he put 27 people in that little car. But and this is a huge division in balloon world because there is a schism in the ballooniverse, if you will, between gospel twisters who use balloons to teach Bible lessons and will sometimes do things like balloons of Jesus on the cross, and adult twisters who do more raunchy balloons.
There must be an in-between.
I think there is.
It's not like if you get a balloon guy, it's either going to be a gospel guy or a sexy guy.
You're absolutely right. I think there is a sort of small rump of people in the middle who are just sick of this balloon infighting.
Right.
But there are conventions, obviously, and at the conventions may not be big enough to only have one or the other, so they meet at conventions like the Jets and the Sharks. You know, the sexy balloon people and the gospel balloon people.
Right.
And it's uncomfortable, it's awkward.
There must be so many burst balloons when they get to the bit where they nail Jesus to the cross.
Did you read that the FBI were called by multiple pilots to investigate a man with a jetpack flying over LA? And I didn't realise that whenever someone is seen flying with a jetpack, the FBI have to investigate. Because as far as we know, no one can really fly with a jetpack except like a sort of a metre above the ground for about a centimetre, and then they fall off. Technology hasn't quite got to better levels yet. But
so it must be like the Russians, I guess.
That's the fear, or the aliens. And this was flying at over 900 metres high. I think 3 separate pilots reported it in sort of 4 separate months, so it had obviously been up there for ages.
Yeah.
And I don't know what this person was eating. But anyway, the FBI had to investigate it, and it turned out it was the character from Nightmare Before Christmas, from a Halloween, which had been released. It was a balloon version of Jack Skellington from Nightmare Before Christmas had sailed up into the sky and was investigated by the FBI.
Oh, it is amazing, because you hear the LA pilots landing and they're like, there's a jetpack man right next to me. Like, it was really, it was a real mystery for ages. The FBI, by the way, do have to look into some pretty weird things. This is going back to an earlier fact, but I saw on the FBI website a calling out saying FBI seeking bad breath bandit in Northern California. And it was just a guy who supposedly they thought must have bad breath because he kept going into, this is pre-pandemic, with face masks on. So
do you think they'll have like one of those identity parades where just people breathed in your face and you're like, it's definitely that guy?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Presumably they were seeking him for other crimes than having bad breath.
Oh, yeah, no, he was robbing banks.
Why did they think he had bad breath if he was robbing banks and wearing a mask? Isn't that absolute Route 1 bank robbing? Like, what?
That's such a good point, yes. It was like that's just a fucking great point. I don't know what to say to that.
I'm not sure this FBI know what they're doing anymore.
We weirdly, we need to wrap up soon.
Can we do some spots?
I know.
Weird spots, like
yeah.
the balloon thing.
Yeah, go for it,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's a company called AKQA, and they used artificial intelligence to come up with a new sport. They came up with something called Speedgate, and this supposedly combines familiar elements of croquet, rugby, and soccer.
Great. Sign me up.
It sounds great. You've got like a goal in the middle and 2 goals on either side, and you have to go through the middle goal to get possession, and then you have to go round and knock it through the other goal. And if you've got a guy on the other side of the other goal, then they could knock it back through and you get more points. Okay. It's amazing. It's quite a good game. Yeah. In Oregon, the Oregon Sports Authority have now officially recognised it as a sport, and there's a few universities that actually play it. Wow. But the other things that the AI came up with were not quite so good. So they came up with underwater parkour.
Amazing.
They came up with a game where 2 players were in a hot air balloon and on a tightrope, and they had to pass a ball back and forward to each other like tennis. And they came up with an exploding frisbee game, where you basically throw the frisbee to each other, and every now and then it just blows up.
Would watch.
Yeah.
Would no doubt watch. That sounds like a great sport.
Exactly. With Speedgate, which actually is quite a good sport, the AI created an official motto for it, and it was face the ball, to be the ball, and to be above the ball.
So good.
It's got a way to go. I'd listen to that AI commentating, actually. Sounds great.
Have you guys heard of joggling?
Joggling. Is it jogging and juggling together?
Yes.
Oh.
It's jogging and juggling together. You're a joggler if you do it. And the championships are held every year at the International Jugglers Association Festival. And they're good.
Yeah, really?
There is a 3-ball event, there's a 5-ball event, and a 7-ball event over different lengths. And juggling 5 balls is unbelievably hard, let alone 7 while running. But get this, the 100-metre 3-ball record is 14 seconds. Which is faster than I could run 100 metres not juggling. It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
I wonder how many times, can you sort of be holding all 3 balls and just chuck one up in the air as you cross the finish line? Well, you've got to be continuously juggling.
That's a great idea. You could get one and just chuck it 100 metres and then leg it to the other end.
I just have to quickly say that the top of this fact was about Shakira attending the World Championships of keeping a balloon in the air, the balloon championships, and I didn't say who won the championship.
Oh, yeah. Who was it?
So that this year, this inaugural year, it was won by Peru. So just so everyone knows, it was won by Peru. The only reason I didn't say it is because I've genuinely spent this entire time throughout this whole fact trying to work out what I'd actually written down, because what I've got on my paper says won by Perv. And I thought that can't be right.
Congratulations, Andy.
Thank you. Years of ball juggling practice stood me in pretty good stead.
Anyway, look, we need to wrap up. That is it. That is all of our facts. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to get in contact with any of us about the things that we've said over the course of this podcast, we can all be found on our Twitter accounts. I'm on @Schreiberland. Andy?
At Andrew Hunter M.
James?
At James Harkin.
And Anna?
You can email podcast@QI.com.
Yep, or you can go to our group account, which is @NoSuchThing, or our website, nosuchthingasafish.com. All of our previous episodes are up there. And I just want to quickly say thank you so much, St. Albans. That was so awesome. We absolutely loved it. Thank you for having us. We will be back one day. Rest of you, we'll be back again next week. We'll see you then. Goodbye!